The Velthari child had been crying for 6 rotations straight. Every species on Station Meridian 7 could hear it. The sound traveled through ventilation shafts, echoed off metal corridors, and seeped into sleeping quarters where beings of 40 different worlds pressed appendages against their hearing organs and prayed for silence. Zix had tried everything. She had offered her daughter Miri the traditional comfort songs of their people. She had wrapped the small lavender-skinned girl in the softest thermal blankets from their homeworld. She had even purchased an obscenely expensive sound simulation device that was supposed to recreate the gentle hum of Velthari nurseries. Nothing worked. Miri was terrified. Ever since the pirate attack 3 cycles ago, when raiders had breached the station's outer ring, and Zix had been forced to hide with her daughter in a cargo container for 9 hours, the child refused to sleep. She refused to eat more than survival portions. She flinched at every sound and screamed whenever Zix tried to leave her sight, even to use the waste facilities. The station's medical officer, a Kralix with too many eyes and not enough patience, had examined Miri twice. "The child is physically healthy," he had clicked through his mandibles. "The damage is psychological. She needs time and stability." But time and stability were luxuries Zix could not afford. She worked in the station's hydroponic farms, and her supervisor had already warned her that continued absences would result in termination. Without work, she could not afford their quarters. Without quarters, she and Miri would be forced onto a refugee transport heading somewhere, anywhere, that would take them. On the 7th rotation of Miri's crying, Zix made a decision that frightened her. She went to find a human. Everyone knew about the humans. They had arrived in galactic society only 30 solar cycles ago, emerging from a small yellow star system that most species had dismissed as unremarkable. Their planet was a nightmare. Extreme temperature variations, unpredictable weather patterns, megafauna that could crush a Velthari with a single step, and an atmosphere so oxygen-rich that most species found it intoxicating. The humans themselves were equally alarming. They were persistent predators capable of chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They healed from injuries that would kill other species. They consumed chemicals for recreation that would dissolve the internal organs of any sensible being. And they formed pack bonds with anything, including creatures that could kill them. But it was this last trait that gave Zix hope. She found the human in the recreation sector, sitting alone at a table in the corner of a food establishment. He was large by human standards, with dark skin, short-cropped hair, and hands that looked capable of crushing stone. A jagged scar ran down the left side of his face, pulling at the corner of his eye. Zix almost turned around, almost fled back to her quarters where at least the danger was familiar. But then she noticed what the human was doing. He was feeding a skitter. Skitters were vermin, small, 6-legged creatures that infested space stations across the galaxy, chewing through wiring and contaminating food supplies. Most stations employed exterminators to kill them on sight. But this human was carefully breaking off pieces of his meal and offering them to a skitter that sat on the table in front of him, its antenna twitching with each morsel. "You should not do that," Zix said before she could stop herself. "They carry diseases." The human looked up. His eyes were brown, warm like heated nutrient paste. "So do I, probably," he said. Little Guy was hungry. He gestured to the seat across from him. "You need something? You've been standing there for 5 minutes working up the courage to talk to me." Zix felt her face flush violet with embarrassment. She had not realized she had been so obvious. She lowered herself into the seat, keeping her hands folded in her lap where he could see them. "I am Zix," she said. "I have a daughter. She is 4 cycles old. She has not stopped crying for 7 rotations." The human's expression changed. The casual amusement faded, replaced by something softer. "Why?" Zix told him about the pirate attack, about the hours in the cargo container, about the sounds of weapons fire and screaming that had filtered through the metal walls while she held her hand over Miri's mouth to keep her quiet. The human listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. What's your daughter's name? Miri. That's pretty. He scratched the skidder behind its antenna. The creature made a sound that might have been contentment. My name's Marcus. Marcus Webb. I used to be a soldier. Now I fix things on the station, broken pipes, faulty wiring, that sort of stuff. I do not understand what this has to do with my daughter. Marcus smiled. It transformed his face, softening the scar and the hard lines around his eyes. Back on Earth, where I come from, we have these animals called dogs. Humans have lived with them for thousands of years. We bred them to be our companions. And one of the things we learned is that dogs can help people who have been through bad stuff. Trauma, we call it. The presence of a dog can help calm a person down, make them feel safe. I cannot acquire a dog, Zix said. I have researched this. Earth animals require special permits and environmental controls that I cannot afford. I wasn't suggesting you get a dog. Marcus's smile widened. I was suggesting you get me. Zix stared at him. I do not understand. Take me to meet your daughter. Let me try something. If it doesn't work, you've lost nothing but an hour of time. If it does work. He shrugged those massive shoulders. Maybe you and Miri can finally get some sleep. Zix did not trust this human. She did not understand his motives. Everything she knew about survival in the galaxy told her that accepting help from strangers led to exploitation, debt, or death. But Miri had been crying for 7 rotations. Follow me, Zix said. Miri screamed the moment Marcus entered the quarters. It was not a cry of discomfort or a whimper of fear. It was a full-throated shriek of absolute terror, the kind of sound that small prey animals made when death appeared in their peripheral vision. Zix rushed to her daughter's side, scooping the child into her arms and turning her body to shield Miri from the human. I am sorry, Zix said, her voice breaking. This was a mistake. You should leave. But Marcus did not leave. He also did not advance. He lowered himself to the floor of the tiny quarters, folding his legs beneath him until he was sitting. Then he placed his hands palm up on his knees and began to hum. The sound was low and rhythmic, nothing like the songs Zix knew. It had no words, no discernible melody, just a deep vibration that seemed to come from somewhere in the human's chest. Miri's screaming faltered. The child's fingers still dug into Zix's clothing, but her eyes, wet with tears and wide with fear, fixed on the human. Marcus did not look back. He kept his gaze on the floor, his posture relaxed, his body as unthreatening as something that large could possibly appear. The humming continued, rising and falling like waves on an alien shore. Minutes passed. Zix felt her own tension beginning to ease, though she fought against it. She could not afford to let her guard down. She could not afford to trust. But Miri's breathing was slowing. What are you doing? Zix whispered. Back home we call it grounding, Marcus said, his voice barely louder than his humming. When someone's scared, really scared, their brain gets stuck in fight or flight mode. Everything looks like a threat. The humming gives her something to focus on. That isn't scary. The posture shows her I'm not going to hurt her. How do you know this will work on a Velthari child? Marcus smiled without showing his teeth. I don't, but fear is pretty universal. Back when I was a soldier, I spent time in places where people had been through terrible things. Wars, natural disasters, that sort of stuff. Kids especially. They don't always speak the same language as you, but they all understand safety. Miri's grip on Zix's clothing loosened slightly. I'm going to reach into my pocket, Marcus said. Slowly, I'm going to pull out something I want to show Miri. Is that okay? Zix hesitated, then nodded. True to his word, Marcus moved with exaggerated slowness. His hand disappeared into a pocket on his leg and emerged holding a small object. It was a figure of some kind, carved from what looked like wood, depicting a 4-legged creature with floppy ears and a wagging tail. This is a dog, Marcus said, setting the figure on the floor in front of him. I made it myself, whittling we call it, carving shapes out of wood. I'm not very good at it, but I like doing it. Miri's head emerged slightly from where she had buried it against Zix's shoulder. Dogs are pack animals, Marcus continued. They live in groups like families, And when a dog joins a human family, it doesn't see humans and dogs. It just sees pack, family. The dog will protect its humans like they're the most important thing in the universe because to that dog they are. The child's violet eyes were fixed on the small wooden figure. This particular dog, Marcus said, was named Captain. He belonged to my grandmother when I was a kid. I was scared a lot back then. My parents had died and I didn't understand why. Captain couldn't explain it to me either. But he'd lie next to my bed every night and whenever I had nightmares, he'd lick my face until I woke up. Then he'd press his head against my chest and just breathe with me until I fell back asleep. Marcus pushed the figure slightly forward. I think Captain would have liked you, Miri, he said. He had a thing for brave little kids who were going through hard times. Miri squirmed in Zix's arms. For a terrible moment, Zix thought she was going to start screaming again. But instead, the child was reaching toward the floor, her small purple fingers straining toward the wooden figure. It's okay, Marcus said. You can have it, it's a gift. Zix lowered her daughter slowly. Miri's feet touched the floor, and she took 2 hesitant steps toward the human. Then she snatched the wooden dog from the floor and retreated back to her mother, clutching the figure to her chest. For the first time in 7 rotations, she was not crying. I do not understand, Zix said. Her voice was thick with emotions she could not name. Why would you give this to a stranger? You said it reminds you of your grandmother. It has value to you. Marcus shrugged. Some things are worth more when you give them away. He rose slowly to his feet, still moving with that deliberate care. I'll come back tomorrow if that's okay. Same time. I'll bring some more things to show Miri. If she's comfortable with me, I can teach her some games humans play to help with bad feelings. Why? Zix demanded. The question had been building in her chest since the recreation sector. Why would you help us? You do not know us. We have nothing to offer you. I cannot pay you. I cannot even tell others that you helped us without it being discovered that I brought a human into my quarters, which would raise questions I do not want to answer. Marcus was quiet for a moment. His brown eyes moved from Zix to Miri, who was examining the wooden dog with the intense focus that only children could muster. When I was a soldier, he said finally, I did a lot of things I'm not proud of, hurt people, scared people. Sometimes I was the reason kids like Miri screamed at night. He paused, and Zix saw something old and heavy move behind his eyes. I can't fix what I did, but I can try to balance the scales a little, help where I can, be the person Captain thought I was. He moved toward the door, then stopped. Also, he said, I heard her crying through the ventilation system. My quarters are 2 levels up, and if I had to listen to that for one more rotation, I was going to lose my mind. Despite everything, Zix felt a smile tugging at her mouth. That, she said, I understand perfectly. Marcus left. Miri clutched the wooden dog and looked up at her mother with eyes that held something other than fear for the first time in what felt like forever. Mama, she said, the big one is coming back. Yes, Zix said, the big one is coming back. Miri nodded seriously. Then she pressed the wooden dog against her cheek and closed her eyes. Within minutes, she was asleep. 3 cycles passed, and Marcus kept his promise. He came every evening, always at the same time, always moving slowly, always humming that same low melody when he entered. Miri still flinched when she first saw him, but the screaming had stopped after the 2nd visit. By the 3rd, she would watch him from behind Zix's legs instead of hiding in the sleeping alcove. On the 4th cycle, she spoke to him directly for the first time. Dog, she said, holding up the wooden figure. She had not let it out of her sight since Marcus had given it to her. That's right, Marcus said. He was sitting on the floor again, his back against the wall. Do you want to know what sound dogs make? Miri nodded. Marcus opened his mouth and let out a soft barking sound. It was clearly meant to be gentle, but Miri still jumped back, bumping into Zix's legs. The human immediately went quiet. Sorry, he said. Too loud, let me try again. This time the bark was barely a whisper. Miri giggled. It was the first time Zix had heard her daughter laugh since the attack. You do it, Marcus said to Miri. Make the dog sound. Miri looked uncertain. She glanced up at Zix, seeking permission. Zix nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The child took a deep breath and let out a tiny barking sound. Then she burst into giggles again, covering her mouth with her free hand. Marcus grinned. That was perfect. Captain would be proud. Over the following cycles, Zix found herself watching the human more closely. She noticed things she had missed before. The way he always kept his hands visible. The way he never raised his voice, even when Miri accidentally kicked him during a game. The way he would stop whatever he was doing if the child showed any sign of discomfort, waiting patiently until she was ready to continue. She also noticed the scars. They were everywhere. On his arms, his hands, even a faint one. On his throat that she had not seen at first. Each one told a story of violence survived, of a life lived in constant danger. And yet here he was, sitting on her floor, teaching her daughter a human clapping game while making silly faces. You were in many battles, Zix said one evening, after Miri had fallen asleep clutching her wooden dog. Marcus paused in the act of putting on his jacket. Yeah, too many. Do you miss it? The question seemed to surprise him. He was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant. I miss the people, he said finally. The ones I served with, some of them died, some of them just couldn't adjust to peace, and some of them are still out there doing the same thing I used to do, he shrugged. But the fighting itself, no, I don't miss that. I spent a lot of years being angry, being violent, being the monster that people tell their children about. I don't want to be that anymore. Yet you carry weapons, Zix said. She had noticed the knife strapped to his ankle, poorly concealed by his pants leg. Marcus smiled ruefully. Old habits. The station isn't always safe, especially in the lower rings, and, he hesitated, there are people looking for me, people who don't like that I stopped being what I used to be. Zix felt a chill run through her. Should I be concerned? No, his voice was firm. I would never bring danger to you and Miri. If I thought there was any risk, I would have stayed away. He looked at her sleeping daughter. But I couldn't stay away. That sound she was making, I heard it a lot back in the war. Kids who'd lost everything. Kids who couldn't sleep because every time they closed their eyes, they saw the worst day of their lives. And you helped them? I tried. His expression darkened. Not always successfully. War doesn't leave much room for healing, but I learned what I could. Read books, talked to doctors, paid attention to what worked and what didn't. He gestured at the sleeping Miri. She's going to be okay, Zix. She's young and she's got you. The nightmares will fade, the fear will get smaller. It won't ever go away completely, but it'll become manageable. Zix studied the human's face. You speak from experience. Yeah, I do. She wanted to ask more. She wanted to know what horrors had carved those scars into his body and soul. She wanted to understand how someone who had clearly seen so much darkness could still have room for kindness. But she did not ask, because she understood that some stories were not ready to be told. Thank you, she said instead, for helping my daughter, for helping us. Marcus stood, rolling his shoulders. Don't thank me yet, we still have a lot of work to do. He moved toward the door, then paused. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something. Miri's making progress, but she needs more than just me showing up for an hour every evening. She needs stability, routine, things that make her feel safe. I have to work, Zix said, her voice heavy. My supervisor has already threatened termination twice. If I lose this job, we lose everything. I know, Marcus turned back to face her. That's why I talk to some people. There's a human woman who works in the medical sector. Her name is Dr. Chen. She specializes in helping people who have been through trauma. She's agreed to see Miri free of charge. Zix stared at him. Free of charge? Why would she do that? Because I asked her to, Marcus smiled. Humans are weird like that. We help each other. We help strangers. Sometimes we even help species that think we're monsters. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a data chip. Here's her contact information and the location of her office. She's expecting you tomorrow during your midday break. Zix took the chip with trembling hands. I do not know what to say. Say you'll go, say you'll give Miri every chance she deserves. Marcus opened the door. And maybe, just maybe, give yourself a chance too. You've been so focused on taking care of your daughter that you've forgotten you went through the same thing she did. You were in that cargo container too. You heard those sounds too. The words hit Zix like a physical blow. She had not thought about her own trauma. She had not allowed herself to think about it. There was no time. There was only Miri, only survival, only the next rotation and the one after that. "I am fine," she said, though her voice wavered. Marcus did not argue. He just looked at her with those warm brown eyes that had seen too much. "Tomorrow," he said, "midday break, Dr. Chen's office, promise me." Zix looked at her sleeping daughter, at the wooden dog clutched in small purple fingers, at the piece on Miri's face that had seemed impossible just cycles ago. "I promise," she said. Dr. Sarah Chen was not what Zix expected. The human woman was small, barely taller than Zix herself. She had silver-streaked black hair pulled back from a round face, and she moved with the careful precision of someone who had spent their life working with fragile things. Her office was cluttered with strange objects, plants in colorful pots, pictures of landscapes that Zix assumed were from Earth, a small device that made tinkling sounds when air moved past it. "You must be Zix," Dr. Chen said, rising from behind her desk, "and this must be Miri." Miri pressed against her mother's leg, the wooden dog clutched to her chest. She had not screamed when they entered, which Zix considered progress. "Marcus told me about what happened to you both," Dr. Chen continued, gesturing to a pair of seats. They were oversized, clearly designed to accommodate species larger than humans. "Please sit, make yourselves comfortable." Zix sat. Miri climbed into her lap immediately. "I want you to know," Dr. Chen said, settling back into her own chair, "that everything we discuss here is confidential. I won't share any information with anyone, including Marcus, without your permission. My only goal is to help you and your daughter feel safe and heal from what you've experienced." "Why?" Zix asked. The question came out more harshly than she intended. "Marcus said you would see us for free, but nothing is free. There is always a cost." Dr. Chen nodded slowly. "That's a fair question. The truth is you're right. There is a cost. But I'm the one paying it, not you." She leaned forward. "I came to this station 5 years ago because I wanted to help people who didn't have access to mental health care. Most species in the galaxy don't have any concept of psychological treatment. They think trauma is just something you live with, something that eventually fades on its own. Does it not? Sometimes, for some people." Dr. Chen's voice was gentle but firm. "But for many others, trauma festers. It grows. It becomes something that controls their entire life, even when they're not consciously aware of it. They develop habits and fears and reactions that seem irrational to everyone around them, but make perfect sense when you understand what they've been through." Miri shifted in Zix's lap, her eyes darting around the room. "I see you brought your friend," Dr. Chen said, nodding at the wooden dog. "Can you tell me about it?" Miri looked up at her mother. Zix nodded encouragingly. "Dog," Miri said quietly. "Marcus gave it to me. It keeps bad dreams away." Dr. Chen smiled. "That's a very special gift. Dogs are important to humans. They've been our friends for thousands and thousands of years." She opened a drawer in her desk and pulled out another wooden figure, this one depicting a creature with a long tail and pointed ears. "Do you know what this is?" Miri shook her head. "This is a cat. Cats are another animal that humans love. They're very different from dogs. Dogs are loyal and energetic. Cats are independent and mysterious." She held out the figure. "Would you like to hold it?" Miri hesitated, then reached out and took the cat figure. She examined it carefully, turning it over in her hands. "Marcus makes these," Dr. Chen said. "He brings them to me, and I give them to children who come to see me. He says it helps him stay calm, making things with his hands." Zix felt something shift in her chest. "You have known Marcus for a long time." 3 years. He was one of my first patients when I arrived on the station." Dr. Chen's expression softened. "He was in very bad shape. Nightmares every night, couldn't be in crowds, flinched at loud noises. He'd spent 20 years as a soldier, and when he finally stopped fighting, all the things he'd been pushing down came rushing to the surface. He never told me this. He wouldn't. Marcus is very private about his struggles, but he's given me permission to share his story with people he refers to me because he wants them to understand that healing is possible. Dr. Chen gestured at the cluttered office. When he first came to see me, he couldn't sit in a chair. He had to have his back against a wall and a clear line of sight to the door. Now he volunteers at the station's refugee center, helping newly arrived families adjust to life here. The man you've met isn't the same man who walked into my office 3 years ago. Zix thought about the Marcus she knew, the slow movements, the constant humming, the careful positioning of his body. She had assumed those were just human behaviors. Now she understood they were coping mechanisms, hard-won tools for managing a mind that had been through hell. "Can you help my daughter?" Zix asked. "I believe I can, but I have to be honest with you." Dr. Chen looked directly at Zix. "Miri isn't the only one who needs help." Zix stiffened. "I am fine. You haven't slept more than 3 hours a night since the attack. You've lost weight because you can't eat without. Feeling nauseous. You jump at unexpected sounds, and you've been checking and rechecking the locks on your quarters every night before bed. How do you know this?" "Because those are the same symptoms I see in every trauma survivor, regardless of species." Dr. Chen's voice remained gentle. "You've been so focused on protecting Miri that you haven't allowed yourself to process what happened to you. And that's understandable. You're a mother. Your child comes first. But Miri is watching you. She learns from you. If she sees you pretending to be okay while clearly suffering, she'll learn that's what she's supposed to do too." Zix wanted to argue. She wanted to insist that she was handling everything, that she was strong, that she did not need help from humans or anyone else. But she was so tired. "What would I have to do?" she asked quietly. "Talk to me. Come here when you can, even if it's just for a few minutes during your break. Tell me what happened, how you felt, how you're feeling now." Dr. Chen reached across her desk and placed a hand palm up an offer of contact. "You don't have to carry this alone anymore, Zix. That's what I'm here for." Miri looked up at her mother. The child's eyes were bright with something that might have been hope. "Mama," she said, "the doctor is nice like Marcus." Zix felt tears prickling at her eyes. She had not cried since the attack. She had not allowed herself to cry. But now, in this cluttered office with its tinkling wind device and its wooden animals and its small human woman with kind eyes, she felt something crack inside her. "Okay," she whispered, "I will talk to you." Dr. Chen smiled. "Good, that's the first step." And Zix. "Yes. Marcus was right about you. You're very brave, both of you are." Zix held her daughter close and let the tears fall. 2 months after their first meeting, Miri asked if Marcus could take her to see the stars. The request came out of nowhere. Zix and Miri were having dinner in their quarters, eating the nutrient paste that was all Zix could afford on her wages, when Miri suddenly looked up with determination in her violet eyes. "I want to see where the bad people came from," she said. Zix nearly dropped her spoon. "What?" "Marcus says the bad people came from out there." Miri pointed vaguely upward, toward the ceiling that separated them from the vacuum of space. "He says they're gone now. He says space isn't scary, it's beautiful. I want to see." Zix did not know what to say. For weeks, she had watched her daughter slowly emerge from the shell of fear that had imprisoned her. Miri now played in the common areas of their residential block. She talked to other children. She had even started sleeping through the night, the wooden dog tucked under her arm. But space, the observation decks, the same viewports that pirates had used to identify vulnerable sections of the station. "I do not think that is a good idea," Zix said carefully. Miri's face fell, but she did not cry or scream. Instead, she nodded slowly and returned to her meal. Later that evening, after Miri was asleep, Zix called Marcus on her communication device. "She wants to see space," Zix said without preamble. "She asked if you would take her." There was a long pause. "What did you say?" "I said no, but now I am wondering if I was wrong." Zix pressed her free hand against her forehead. Dr. Chen says that avoidance makes fear stronger. She says the way to heal is to gradually face the things that scare you in a controlled environment with support. Dr. Chen is right, Marcus said. But this has to be your decision, and Miri's, I won't push either of you. Do you think she is ready? Another pause. I think Miri is braver than she realizes. I think she wants to prove to herself that the universe isn't just pirates and cargo containers. But I also think she's scared, and she needs to know that it's okay to be scared. Zix closed her eyes. I am scared too. I know. I have not been to an observation deck since before the attack. I used to take Miri there when she was younger. She loved watching the ships come and go. Zix's voice caught. Now I cannot even think about it without feeling like I am going to be sick. Then come with us, Marcus said. All three of us together. Miri can see that her mother is facing her fear, and you can see that it's possible to feel afraid and do something anyway. Is that not dangerous? What if I panic? What if I make things worse for Miri? You won't, and even if you do, I'll be there. Dr. Chen taught me some techniques for helping people who are panicking. I've gotten pretty good at it. She could hear the smile in his voice. Besides, I hear humans are supposed to be comforting, something about pack bonding, whatever that means. Zix laughed despite herself. It was a small laugh, fragile and uncertain, but it was real. Okay, she said, we will go. But I reserve the right to leave if it becomes too much. Always no pressure, no expectations, just three people looking at stars. The observation deck was empty when they arrived. Marcus had chosen the time carefully, late in the station's night cycle when most residents were asleep. The lights were dim, and the massive viewport stretched from floor to ceiling, revealing an endless field of stars. Miri stopped in the doorway, her small hand gripping Zix's fingers so tightly it almost hurt. Her other hand held the wooden dog. It's big, she whispered. Yeah, Marcus said, crouching down to her level. It is, but you know what? It's been this big the whole time. It was this big before the bad people came, and it'll be this big long after everyone's forgotten they ever existed. Are they out there now, the bad people? Maybe, probably. Marcus pointed at a cluster of distant lights. But see those are patrol ships. The station hired extra security after what happened, and see that. He pointed to another section of the viewport where a massive structure floated in the distance. That's a defense platform. It has weapons that can destroy any ship that tries to attack. The bad people aren't coming back, Miri, and even if they tried, we'd be ready for them. Miri nodded slowly. She took one hesitant step forward, then another. Zix followed, her own legs trembling. They stopped about halfway to the viewport. Miri stared at the stars, her breath fogging slightly in the cool air of the observation deck. Which one is Earth? She asked. Marcus looked surprised by the question. He scanned the viewport, then pointed to a small, unremarkable yellow dot near the edge of their view. That one, see it, the slightly yellow one. Miri squinted. It's small. From here, yeah, but it's actually pretty big up close, and it's got mountains and oceans and forests and deserts and all sorts of other things. Marcus smiled. And dogs, lots and lots of dogs. I want to go there someday, Miri said. I want to see a real dog. Zix felt tears threatening again. She had done a lot of crying over the past 2 months, more than she had done in her entire adult life. Dr. Chen said it was healthy, that tears were a way of releasing emotions that had been bottled up for too long. But it still felt strange, this constant leaking from her eyes. Maybe you will, Marcus said. Earth is open to visitors now. There are programs for people who want to see it. Can you take us? Marcus glanced at Zix. She saw the question in his eyes, the uncertainty. They had grown close over these months, but he had never overstepped, never assumed anything beyond what she explicitly offered. If your mother says it's okay, he said carefully, then maybe someday when you're older. Miri turned to Zix, her eyes shining with reflected starlight. Please, Mama. Zix looked at her daughter, at the child who had screamed for 7 rotations straight, at the small purple face that had been hollow with fear and was now bright with wonder. "Someday," Zix said, "if Marcus is willing to guide us." "I'm willing," Marcus said softly, "for as long as you'll have me." They stood there for a long time, the three of them, watching the stars turn slowly past the viewport. Miri pressed herself against the transparent material, pointing out patterns she invented in the lights. Marcus told her human stories about constellations, about ancient peoples who had looked at the same stars and imagined heroes and monsters. And Zix stood behind them, her hand resting on her daughter's shoulder, and felt something she had not felt since before the attack. Hope. 1 year after the attack, Zix received a message that changed everything. She was working in the hydroponic farms, tending to the nutrient dispensers that fed the station's food supply, when her communication device buzzed. She expected it to be Marcus, confirming their plans for dinner that evening, or Dr. Chen, reminding her of their weekly session. Instead, the message was from station security. "We have captured the individuals responsible for the pirate attack on Ring 7. As a victim, you have the right to attend their sentencing hearing. Details attached." Zix stared at the words until they blurred. Her hands began to shake, and she had to grip the edge of a planting bed to keep herself upright. They had caught them. The pirates who had torn through the station, who had killed 17 people, who had sent her and Miri hiding in a cargo container while screams echoed through the corridors. They were in custody. She should feel relieved. She should feel vindicated. Justice was being done. Instead, she felt nothing but cold dread. That evening, she showed the message to Marcus. He read it in silence, his face unreadable. "Are you going to go?" he asked. "I do not know." Zix paced the small living area of her quarters. Miri was in her room, playing with the collection of wooden animals Marcus had carved for her over the past year. "Part of me wants to see them, to look them in the eyes and let them know what they did to us." "And the other part?" Zix stopped pacing. "The other part never wants to think about them again. The other part wants to forget they exist." Marcus nodded slowly. "Both of those are valid responses. There's no right answer here. Dr. Chen says that facing my fears helps me heal. She also says that you get to decide what that looks like. Facing your fears doesn't mean forcing yourself to do things you're not ready for." Marcus leaned forward in his chair. "What does your gut tell you?" Zix was quiet for a long moment. Then she walked to Miri's door and pushed it open gently. Her daughter was sitting on the floor, arranging wooden animals in careful rows. The original dog, the one Marcus had given her a year ago, sat in the place of honor at the front. "Miri," Zix said, "can I ask you something?" Miri looked up. "Yes, Mama." "The bad people, the ones who hurt the station, they caught them, they're going to be punished." Zix crouched down to her daughter's level. "How does that make you feel?" Miri thought about it seriously. She picked up the wooden dog and held it against her chest. "Good," she said finally. "They were mean. Mean people should be punished." "Would you want to see them? Would you want to look at them and tell them they were wrong?" Miri shook her head immediately. "No, why would I want to see them? They're not important anymore." Zix felt something loosen in her chest. "You're right, they're not important anymore." She returned to the living area, where Marcus was waiting. "I'm not going to go," she said. "I don't need to see them. I don't need to confront them. They've already taken too much of my life. I'm not giving them any more." Marcus smiled. It was that warm, transformative smile that still made Zix's heart do strange things after all these months. "I think that's the right decision," he said, "for what it's worth." The sentencing happened without them. Zix heard about it through station gossip. The pirates had received life sentences in a labor facility on a mining asteroid. They would spend the rest of their days breaking rocks in the dark, far from the stars they had once traveled. It was enough. It was more than enough. Life on station. Meridian 7 continued. Zix received a promotion at the hydroponic farms, moving from basic maintenance to crop management. The pay increase allowed her to move to a larger quarters in a safer section of the station, one with a window that looked out at the stars. Miri started school. She made friends. She still had nightmares sometimes, but they were becoming less frequent. Dr. Chen said that was normal, that healing wasn't a straight line but a winding path with setbacks and breakthroughs. And Marcus became something more than a helper, more than a friend. He was there for Miri's first day of school, waiting outside the classroom with Zix until the doors opened. He was there for the nightmares, telling stories about Earth dogs until Miri fell back asleep. He was there for the quiet evenings, sharing meals and conversations and comfortable silences. One evening, as they sat on the small balcony of Zix's new quarters, watching ships come and go from the station's docking bays, Miri climbed into Marcus's lap without hesitation. "Marcus," she said, "are you going to stay?" Marcus looked at Zix. The question was in his eyes again, that same careful uncertainty. Zix reached out and took his hand. "Yes," she said, answering for him, "he's going to stay." Marcus's fingers tightened around hers. His skin was rough with scars and calluses, warm with the elevated temperature that all humans carried. It felt like safety. It felt like home. "I heard something once," Marcus said softly, "about how humans are supposed to be dangerous. Deathworlders, they call us, monsters from a planet that's trying to kill everything on it." He looked down at Miri, who had fallen asleep against his chest, the wooden dog clutched in her hands. "But the thing is, the same traits that make us dangerous also make us protectors. We chase down our prey, but we also chase down our loved ones when they run away. We bond with things that can kill us, but we also bond with things we need to protect." "You are a strange species," Zix said. "Yeah," Marcus smiled, "we really are." They sat in silence, watching the stars wheel past. The station hummed around them, full of life and noise and 1,000 different species going about their business. Somewhere in the universe, pirates still raided and wars still raged and terrible things still happened to innocent people. But here on this small balcony, a human held a sleeping Velthari child while her mother watched the same stars that had once filled her with dread and now filled her with peace. It was not a perfect ending. Zix knew that healing was never complete, that she and Miri would carry the echoes of that cargo container for the rest of their lives. But it was enough. More than enough. It was home,